what if all the stories about Jesus are made up? And what if the Gospels are all fiction? And what if the resurrection is a myth? So in this final session, I want to address those questions because they're important, aren't they? Now, there's several reasons you can have confidence that Gospel accounts are actually what happened. I'll give you a few of them real quick. First, there are several specific facts and details in each of the Gospels that would have been very unlikely for the authors to actually make up if that's what they were trying to do. In fact, it would have been a waste of time and money to invent them. The simplest explanation is that the stories are true. For example, if the Gospel writers are trying to make up a story, to start a movement, why would they say Jesus, the hero in their story, dies by Roman crucifixion? Because in that culture, that was one of the most shameful deaths you could have. That detail would have been embarrassing to the entire cause. But all four writers talk about it. All four writers tell of Peter denying Jesus 3 times. They all portrayed themselves, if you think about it, they all portrayed themselves as having abandoned Jesus, unfollowed Jesus, lost all hope. They record how they didn't believe when they first heard the tomb was empty. They share stories of how they argued about who was going to be greatest. They grabbed for power when they were with Jesus. In other words, they don't portray themselves in these stories as noble or heroic. They often are confused about what Jesus is trying to teach them, and they don't gain clarity until after the resurrection. The stories they record are actually embarrassing to them. So why write those if they're making it up? Second, why would they share so much detail about the miracles Jesus performed, including his own resurrection? Again, if these stories are made up, it's pretty easy to disprove these miracles, right? After all, these accounts were written during the lifetime of the people who lived and were present at these moments with and around Jesus. So all you had to do is talk to people who were there to see if the miracles actually happened. And then, why make the foundation of this movement if you're making it up? Why make it the resurrection of Jesus when no one in that culture readily accepted or believed that resurrection was possible? That's a pretty hard lie to sell, wouldn't you say? You wouldn't actually record that unless it happened. After all, what did these people have to gain from making up the story? This certainly wasn't going to gain the power or the money that you might think they wanted. In that culture, they knew holding to this story would cost them. And it did. The Jews and the Romans both wanted to crush this movement of Christianity. So they didn't gain by telling the story. All you have to do is read Luke's account in Acts of what happened to them. They lost, and they lost deeply. But in spite of all the loss and the pain and the struggle, suddenly they were fearless, they were courageous, they were bold in the face of persecution and death. And I think that's perhaps the most convincing proof of why you can trust the Gospels. The disciples of Jesus, including Matthew and Peter and John, they all lost their lives. But here's the distinction I don't want you to miss. They didn't die, they weren't killed because of their beliefs. They didn't die, they weren't martyred protecting Jesus' teachings or Jesus' beliefs. Lots of people die for what they believe. That's not really that extraordinary. No, these disciples were all killed because they would not deny what they had seen and heard and experienced, which was they saw a man die and then they saw him alive. They went to their graves because they wouldn't denounce that they had watched Jesus die and then 3 days later seen him with their own eyes. That is extraordinary proof. And they gained nothing by clinging to that as a lie. The most plausible, reasonable explanation for why they wrote these Gospels, why they shared this message, is because what they wrote actually happened. So that is the question you have to now ask yourself. Is there evidence for the resurrection of Jesus? If you decide there is, and I'm certainly convinced there's plenty of it to believe, then it's game on. Because you can trust the Gospels, you can trust everything they tell us Jesus said, because he rose from the dead. Jesus does not invite us to blindly follow his teaching or belief system. He invites us to follow him. And he proved he was who he claimed to be when he died and rose again. He left us evidence that we can trust. Now, if you want to dig deeper into this, you can check out History's Greatest Mystery on our YouTube channel. And if you want to explore more of the evidence, just let us know. We would love to point you to some more evidence and to some more resources so you can explore for yourself.